Joining us at our table this morning is Marjorie Dannenfelser. She is the president of the Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America group. Thanks for being here this morning. Very timely, as you wrote a piece in the Washington Post this morning. Message to Trump and the GOP pro-life voters are watching. And you respond to what he had to say recently about being flexible on the so-called Hyde Amendment. Let's listen to the president.
Let the money go in the healthcare account or however you do it. Let the money go directly to the people. Now, you have to be a little flexible on Hyde. You know that. You got to be a little flexible. You got to work something. You got to use ingenuity. You got to work. We're all big fans of everything, but you got to be flexible. You have to have flexibility. I came out with a statement. Let the money go not to the big fat cats and the insurance companies that made 1,700% over the last short period of time. Let the money go directly to the people where they can buy their own health care.
Marjorie Dannenfelser, the president calling on your groups and others to be flexible on the Hyde Amendment. First, explain the Hyde Amendment.
Sure, the Hyde Amendment has been around since 1976. It's a consensus project, if you want to call it that. It basically is consensus legislation. It's been around. Democrats, Republicans, independents all have agreed for a long time, don't allow taxpayers' money to go into fund abortion as part of any program. So it could be a federal program like Medicaid, which is where it originally began, or through any other federal program. So, you know, you could be ambivalent about it. You could actually think it's the death of a human being, but your tax dollars shouldn't be there to support it. And it was named for Henry Hyde, who was a congressman in Illinois. So that has been the status quo for all of those years. That's been the consensus. And so to be flexible is inappropriate. It's inappropriate morally. It's inappropriate politically. Makes no sense for the Republican Party. It reflects a move away from the pro-life base of the Republican Party on the politics piece of it. Great to be flexible in all sorts of things, like, I don't know, yoga, what you eat tonight, what you're going to wear. Flexible on the bedrock principle of legislating. If you're a Republican, and for Democrats for ages also agreed, would be very inappropriate and wrong, and it will be felt very strongly, and already has been roiling through the people who will go door to door, all the communications that will go to voters in battlegrounds. You know how close a lot of the definition of a battleground is. You only win or lose by a handful of votes. And so this would make a big difference if the party decides it has no interest in it anymore.
You wrote pro-life voters are watching. And do you feel that the president and this administration is taking your group and your support for granted?
Yeah, somebody, a consultant close to the White House said, you know, we're a cheap date. That basically they want to hear words from the stage, like we'll see later today. We're pro-life. We really mean it. There's some good things and very good things that are happening in this administration. Obviously, great things from our perspective did happen, giving the choice about what our laws should be back to the people when it overturned Roe v. Wade. Many good things, but that does not mean that there isn't a future and what we should be doing in the future. The Dobbs, as you know, which overturned Roe v. Wade, allowed all legislatures to act again without being inhibited. Many of them have acted. So we're in a place in history where all that is being worked out. The president got very worried as he moved into his second elect, and then also the midterms right before, the abortion issue was going to hurt the chances of Republican candidates. But he got it wrong, because the problem is, if you don't try to find that sweet spot, at least, just talking as a political person, not somebody who's an advocate, you better find that sweet spot where politics on the abortion issue, because what you do is you perhaps give away more than you're ever going to get. Meaning, you give away the abortion issue, you lose those handful of votes that you need to win in a battleground.
Did he give it away when during the election he said this is a state issue? This is what he thought he was doing. What he thought he was going to accomplish was never having to deal with the issue again. And that is, no one has ever called President Trump naive. I would say that's naive. He considers himself the most pro-life president in history because of his role in overturning Roe v. Wade. Those judges were
were pivotal in the overturn of Roe v. Wade and returning the democratic process back to this issue. He thought he was handling it by saying every state do what you want. The problem is we are a nation of states, and there is going to be a national policy. The White House just yesterday put out some new policies that were changed from the Biden administration that were very good. But the essential problem is that this is either a human rights question or it's not a human rights question for the unborn child. So if it is a human rights question, it doesn't belong. California human rights should be the same as North Carolina, Arkansas, New York human rights. You do need to look at it in a national scope. And and in the same breath as talking about the human rights of an unborn child, you must focus on the needs of women. The needs of the people having those babies matter tremendously, and that needs to always be a part of the communication, and we're not seeing that from him as well.
Today is the 53rd March for Life happening here in Washington, D.C. Supporters will hear from the Vice President, J.D. Vance, as well as Speaker Mike Johnson. And we'll have live coverage starting at 12 p.m. Eastern Time today here on C-SPAN, on our free video mobile app, C-SPAN Now, or online on demand at cspan.org. Marjorie Dannenfelser, what do you want to hear from the Vice President today when he speaks to you and your supporters?
We would like to hear, we're going to reestablish the rules surrounding the distribution of the abortion drug, reestablish what he mifepristone, that was in the first Trump administration, that was during the COVID era. Biden changed to be only mail order, no in-person doctor visit, no in-person visit at all necessary, no sonogram to find the gestation of the baby, no sonogram to find out if you have an ectopic pregnancy, no sense of doing the blood work or labs before you have a pill abortion in your bathroom. That was all changed under COVID, and then what we're hoping is going to happen, and what we've been working hard to see happen, is just the rules surrounding the distribution of that you go back to the doctor again. We're not even trying to eliminate, we're trying to do something we just think, and most people think, according to the polls, think is just common sense. You should see someone who's you should be cared for by a physician, and make sure that you've got an eye on the health of the woman as you're aborting that child, which of course we don't want to see, but that's what it is. So
you're not trying to get rid of the abortion pill.
That would, I don't want the abortion pill, but what I believe is a consensus opinion, I know is a consensus opinion, is that at least reestablish rules around the distribution. Because, and you're asking what we want to hear today, so I'm giving you kind of the background on why we want to hear this. The consequence of having no rules surrounding it have been horrible, obviously, for unborn children, but I'm talking about the women right now, and story after story coming out. Every week there's a news story of some man who has gotten pills through the mail, who is trying to coerce his girlfriend, his ex-wife, someone on campus perhaps, and in several cases, to take the pill because the person is pregnant, the woman is pregnant. And the coercion involved in that is coming out. One medical resident in Ohio, whose girlfriend was pregnant, he stuffed the pills down her throat while she was sleeping. He has been indicted. This is not just rumor. This is actually what's happening in several similar cases. So her baby, of course, died, and she went to the ER. Texas has got 2 documented cases. There are cases in Illinois and all over the country coming out all the time. So I think it's something that, look, what you do when you see that, say it was a Theraflu that was causing these the problems, you would take it off the market, then you would figure out what you need to do, put rules around it, and perhaps put it back on the market. But you don't ignore real life consequences of this drug.
We want to invite our callers to join us this morning. Democrats 202-748-8000, Republicans 202-748-8001, and Independents 202-748-8002. You can text as well at 202-748-8003. Is there a generic version of mifepristone, and when did that happen?
Good question. In fact, after our pleas to reestablish these rules surrounding the distribution back to an in-person doctor visit, what happened, but a new generic version of the same drug was approved by the administration. So now it's
the Trump
cheaper.
administration.
The Trump administration, this administration. So it became cheaper and more available. That is the opposite direction that a pro-life administration should be working on, or just an administration that cares about the health of women.
What have you seen from the president when you look at his first term and what he would say on the issue of abortion versus when he ran for the second term and during this first year? At the Republican National Committee, what happened to abortion language in the platform? What has happened since then?
So the first administration, there was no question. This was going to be the pro-life nominee. He was in the middle of quite a lot of scandal. He knew that he only had votes to gain. He made promises that he delivered on to the pro-life movement. Could not have been more perfect in terms of an analysis of a pro-life advocate like me. He did a fantastic job. It led to a historic change in how we approach this issue. So again, A+. You move into post-Dobbs, where pro-life Republicans became terrified about what to do. There's a lot of people saying no one had any idea what to do. Well, there was a lot of very concrete planning that went on. There was no execution, almost zero execution on the part of Republican leaders and the Republican Party in general. So when you do that in politics, you act in fear, you step back, you allow the opponent, in this case it's the pro-choice movement, to label you, and you say nothing. Well, you wear that label and you suffer the consequences. What happened, as you may remember, in the 22 midterms after Dobbs was that not one statewide Republican official lost his or her election. It wasn't the Republican wave everybody was looking for, but not one statewide Republican pro-life official lost. And there were many battlegrounds among those. So it just showed that if there was a bare minimum of fight left in you, or that you can renew your fight, then you'll do okay. You'll be respected, and even if you've passed a strong pro-life protection in your state, you'll be okay. So fast forward to fear getting worse rather than abated, and moving into the convention right before the election. The president and his consultants worked very hard and smart from their perspective to basically stack all of the committee people in the states and allow a vote to basically gut the entire abortion plank out, the pro-life plank out of the platform. So no Hyde Amendments in there. There's basically almost nothing left except for an allusion to the 14th Amendment that we worked hard to try to get in there. So there's a lot of work to be done in the next 3 years. You began this with saying the next 3 years, they are key, they are pivotal to the abortion question moving into the future.
And what is happening to the enthusiasm of pro-life supporters for the president, and how big is that block of voting?
It is an enormous block. He knows that. This cheap date idea that somehow the handful of voters in the Republican coalition that must win in a battleground, a key part of that is pro-life voters. That is a given. The question is, in consultants' mind, is whether you get them regardless of what you do. You can gut the platform. You can do, even if you're the most pro-life president in history, in his words, you can still gut the platform. You can still drop the Hyde Amendment. You can fail to reinstate the policy that is basically driven, that would have kept the abortion rate from going up rather than down after Dobbs. You can fail to do all that, and you're still going to get the vote of the dumb pro-life voter who's not paying attention. Well, that simply is not true. And if midterms go south, then that will be a major reason, a pivotal reason that has happened. So we're sounding those alarm bells now, so that we can recover as a. I'm not necessarily a Republican. It's not my. I am, but it's not my major identity. We, meaning the pro-life movement, and it's part of the Republican Party, must recover before midterms, or we're really going to be in trouble.
All right, let's get to calls. Terry in Ohio, Independent, you're up first.
Thank you. I would just like to ask this lady, I assume she is a Christian, and that's where she gets her pro-life beliefs. But Jesus was not a Christian. He was a devout Jew. And Jews believe, and still do to this day, that life begins at birth, not at conception. That's a dictate from the Vatican 1,000 years later. Also, the 14th Amendment clearly states that rights begin at birth. I'd like a response to that, please.
All right, Terry.
Well, my faith is important to me, but it is not, and it was not, when I changed my opinion from being pro-choice to pro-life, it was based on science and philosophy. I'll say that faith came later, and it buttressed my opinion. So I'm really not prepared to have a faith-based debate with you, but I would say two things. Scripture is full of, I knit you together in your mother's womb. That's in Psalms. That's before Christ himself. There's constant reminders all through Scripture, Old and New Testament, that he knew you before you were born, including Christ himself, who was not probably an accident that he was sent as a baby in his mother's womb. Perhaps there's a moral to that story, but again, that's not the grounds on which I make arguments in the public sphere in order to convince legislators to vote or voters to vote. What we're convincing people of generally is that, yes, the 14th Amendment, which absolutely does not say anything about you're only a person when you're born, that there is equal protection under the law. So the fundamental question is, what is a person? And what makes you you? Were you all together when your DNA was all there right at conception? Did you deserve protection? Did you deserve protection when you developed fingerprints at 12 weeks, when your heart was beating, when your face is fully formed, when your organs are all there? Did you deserve protection there? Do you deserve it at 15 weeks when it's well established that excruciating pain exists during an abortion for a baby? Do you deserve it at 20 weeks? When do you deserve protection? Do you only deserve it perhaps literally at the point of birth, or maybe not then, maybe within a week? The question is the continuum of life, when it begins and when you deserve protection. And while faith is certainly a motivator for many voters, and for me, yes, there are a multitude of arguments that come to the same conclusion, and that is to protect life.
John's next in Massachusetts, Republican.
This is funny how the mega church counterfeit Christians talk about abortions when white women are the ones who are getting it the most after 32 and 35. Another thing is your counterfeit Christians have been infiltrated by these crypto Romans who are Jesuits here, and your first schools were taught by Jesuits, the same ones that ended up colonizing all the countries that they're doing right now. So you can kill brown people here by ice, so then you can import Europeans, the descendants of the ones that funded the Nazis on Wall Street, and this is what we have today. We got to.
Do you have any response?
Yeah, I would say that the human being is the key. The human being is the center. Equal dignity for all, and our country promises equal protection under all in the 14th Amendment, no matter your color, no matter where you're from, no matter what your faith is. You have dignity because you are a human being. That's where it all begins.
Matt is in Falls Church, Virginia. On our line for Democrats. Matt, your turn.
Well, I have to say first that I'm very tired of Christians trying to use the law to push their beliefs on other people who may have disagreements. This is not a theocratic country. Your religion should not guide our laws and policy. We can be moral without needing Christian morals. There are plenty of moral values that are human values. But first, I just have a question for the guest. How many children are waiting adoption in this country?
I don't know the exact number, but it's so high that it is very, very difficult to adopt. I think most people have seen that, know that. Everybody knows someone trying to adopt, and it's very, very difficult because of the supply.
Matt, you there? All right. Well, let's get respond to Matt's first comments about separation of church and state.
I think it's important, very important. I think our first, I would say the reason we're called Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America is that she, Susan B. Anthony, and all her compatriots agreed that abortion was the exploitation of women. Alice Paul, who was the original author of the Equal Rights Amendment, believed that abortion was the ultimate exploitation of women. Why? Because of what we're seeing with the pill going through the mail today. Because he, not wanting the result of his own activity, coerces and pressures women very often. Not always, very often, but it's certainly in the case of these abortion drugs, into eliminating the result of his own activity. There was no question back then on the consensus. There was no question among those women who got women involved in politics in the first place. The newspaper that Susan B. Anthony was the publisher of consistently went after the people who were the purveyors of abortion at that time. The editorial that we base a lot of our advocacy on is the act will burden her conscience in life, the act of abortion. It will burden her soul in the grave, but thrice guilty is the one who drove her to the deed. So you've got everybody there. You've got her baby, you've got coercion, and you've got women who are trying to be empowered and did not see that the power over another human being was going to raise their dignity. It would diminish dignity to try to build rights on the broken rights of another person. There is no religious argument in there. This is a human rights-based argument. The 14th Amendment is not a religious argument. It's a human rights-based argument based on many of the philosophers and people of that time. And the First Amendment, of course, allows the free exercise of religion. So anybody who happens to have faith is welcome in the public sphere, just like people who are atheists or of different faiths. So really, the way it should be, and the reason that Dobbs, which overturned Roe v. Wade, is a good thing, is that who wins in the public arena, who has the best argument, the most convincing argument, is the one who wins the day. There was no coercion involved in that. In fact, there is literally no way that a religion can be imposed on another person. What we're talking about is the way consensus is built, and the best argument wins. And if you don't like that result that happened in your state or that happened on the national level, you get involved in the political process, you make sure your voice is heard, and you try to convince people to change. So almost nobody likes all abortion up into the end or after birth to save the baby's life. It's a minority position at this point in history that life begins at conception, or at least that's not a minority opinion, that it should be legally protected at that time. So where is the strongest place we can be in terms of consensus? Where is that on the continuum? That is a question that is born for democracy. The democracy was born to help meet out among people, and it's reasonable. It is not an imposition of any religious values. It's the way our nation was founded.
We'll go to Maryland, independent caller. Help me with your name. Maryland caller, independent. Is it Lavina? All right, we'll have to move on to Rick in Massachusetts, Democratic caller. Hi, Rick.
Yeah, good morning. I just want to make a couple of comments as far as, the abortion, especially when you have to come to the president.
Oh, Rick, I apologize. Hope you can call back in. Not sure what happened there. Let's go to John in Arlington, Virginia, independent.
Good morning. Earlier it was mentioned that the first administration's pro-life policy and movements and rhetoric was nearly perfect. You mentioned that, guest, and that the second time around, it's not really hitting the nail on the head anymore. You've also mentioned that the cheap date's not going to work anymore, that the pro-life voting bloc of the Republican Party, so that's really the only place that it really exists, is not going to fall for it, and that if we don't have policy change or rhetoric to come back, those votes aren't going to come in. I think that's not true. I think you're going to fold either way. I think it's a fifth and sixth priority for most Republicans. That being said, I think it's...
Well, John, let's get a response to that from our guests.
Mm-hmm. I think you're a very astute observer of politics, and I see a lot of what you're seeing. You've probably seen what we've seen over time, which is, there's two imperfect people. We're going to go for the best. We're going to do our best for that person. This is a different moment. This is about the direction of the Republican Party and whether it will be a home for pro-lifers or not. And right when you're running in 26, and certainly when you're running in 28, you do not have Trump at the top of the ticket. So there's going to be an erosion already. and therefore an erosion of people who are motivated by life, which tend to be motivated by other conservative issues too. Can you afford to lose them? Now, I'm not saying that the numbers of voters in every election for the winning candidate are all highly motivated pro-life voters. They're generally pro-life. Yes, they are pro-life, up to the tune of 90-some% in the Republican Party. Even among young people, they're growing. I'm talking about the group that does the work. I'm talking about my group that's spending $80 million this election cycle and is going door to door, has been for a year, is doing today, will do up until Election Day, 4.5 million homes in battlegrounds, 10 million contacts in addition to that. Will we do that work? I know how individual people at those homes are reacting. They are hearing the news like they had not ever heard before. They're hearing Hyde Amendment. Are you kidding? And so it's about motivation as much as it is anything else. Are you going to skip carpool that day because you know you got to go vote? Are you going to arrange to get to the polls? Well, maybe the consequences aren't so great. Yes, I'm a Republican, but this is really disappointing. It's about motivation on the margins, and that is what loses or wins elections, no matter what party you're in.
The 53rd March for Life rally taking place today here in Washington, D.C., and we have live coverage starting at 12 p.m. Eastern Time. Vice President J.D. Vance and House Speaker Mike Johnson will be delivering remarks. You can watch it here on C-SPAN, C-SPAN Now, our free video mobile app, or online on demand at cspan.org. Marjorie Dannenfelser, the president of Susan B. Anthony Pro-Life America, thank you very much for the conversation.
Thanks for having me.